We got
Bobby, there's a girl here called Audrey Wesser. Why don't you bring her up? Because she seems to be the brains behind these guys. Okay, she's on some of their lives. See if she will come up, because I'd love to have an integrated conversation with her.
Call on in. If there's anybody else that's for afart.org, please jump on in as well. We'd love to have more discussions about this stupidity. But yeah, have her call in, dude. No problem.
Well, I don't know if I think she can hear me. She's in the chat at Audrey Wesser or something like that. Good day to you, Audrey. My name is Armstrong. I'm out of Canada. I've been around a bit. PhD, etc. like that. L1 to work and live in the U.S. FM3 to do the same in Mexico. Senior management job in all aspects. Privileged to be in care and control of a balance sheet of a very large company with assets in Canada and the U.S. And we do have trade agreements into Mexico with various service providers.
Roger's like, let her talk, but let me tell my resume first.
Well, there you go. No, she doesn't know me. Okay, go ahead, Audra.
Well, okay, so I guess I'll follow that up with I have a PhD in domestic policy, a master's degree in American government. I am not the brains behind AFFTRA. I'm actually the antichrist to them because I was the person that first exposed it as not even being legal or constitutional. So I've been painted as the antichrist in this entire thing because I got drug into this. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I'm a policy analyst, member of the American Bar Association. I am not a lawyer. So let me just clarify that.
That's fine.
I got drug into this because what I do in my real life is I write policy for local, state, federal government, international trade deals. My main focus is usually agriculture and natural resource development.
Okay.
So I deal a little bit with trucking, obviously, in those two industries, but I got drug into this because, and this is my short abridged version of the story, is I had a friend of mine, agricultural cow truck driver out of Montana, who said, "Hey, you're our person. What do you think about this AFFRTA thing?" And I'd never even heard of it. To be honest with you, until then, I kind of stayed out of all the trucking stuff. You guys do your thing and, I support you, but I stayed out of it. I read it, literally called him back 15 minutes later and I said, well, let's start with the fact of there's not a single citation in there about where this imaginary number comes from. Number two, it's unconstitutional on so many levels.
I don't know
and
that.
And number three is I said, I will be honest with you. I said, I think TikTok is a great platform to, engage drivers or engage anybody, right? Like engage groups, but there is no validity to TikTok movements. And number four is petitions hold no weight.
Exactly. They're not binding.
Let her talk.
So I'm not a driver. I'm not a truck owner. I'm not in anything. I jumped on this because I saw McGowan was on there and he's really quick to throw me under the bus saying, well, you're not a driver and you don't understand. You're right. I'm not going to argue that. But what I do understand is getting people's hopes up for something that will never happen and bringing hate and discontent to an industry that's already struggling enough for a dozen different reasons we could talk about tonight. And just wanting to be like, hey, I'm not saying that you don't have a right to be angry. I'm not saying you don't have a right to be concerned about your industry because you do, but you're not the only one. And so, no, I am not the brains behind it. I'm kind of the antichrist, and that's kind of how I've been painted, and I'm okay with that.
So, question for you, quick. Sorry. Okay, so when you read this and you talked to him, right? So basically, from my understanding, is like I've tried to go down to the things that they were stating that they wanted, and then he basically tried explaining that everything else under the $5 rule is only if that $5 per mile rule happens. I don't know if you heard him say that or not. So am I understanding this correctly? That all that stuff is just fairy dust unless the $5 per mile happens?
I don't. To be frankly honest with you, sir, I don't understand what he's trying to accomplish because I read things for
Roger, relax,
I read things for context, and so I read it basically based on how it was written and literally even how you produced it. So I don't understand I don't see any contingency saying if this or if that. I just read it for context and the way it's written. Yeah, I see exactly how you're interpreting it that way. I mean, I think you could put 20 people in a room and they can interpret it 20 different ways.
That's what he said. Now, another question for you. I know you said you're not a trucker. Are you familiar with trucking at all a little bit or no?
Yeah, no, I actually am. My grandfather owned a gravel company in Iowa and Wisconsin for many years. So I grew up, my very first job ever was running up and down trees, cutting limbs off of it, hauling it on logging equipment. Sorry, it's kind of like a question for like elite. I was expecting you to say yes or no. My bad. But okay, so now when you look at this 3% cap on brokers, right? Now, do you think it's fair? Because like I say, a broker is the person that gives the loads to the trucking companies. So the broker gets the loads from customers. So now, say if the customer gives the broker $100,000 worth of freight, right? Now this freight broker is liable for the payment of this to the carriers, right? So they're basically responsible for that money to get paid out. So do
you really think putting a 3% on a company like that to only get 3% of like return on big money is fair?
It's not. Not only that, it violates the basic contract law and due process. Like, whether I think that number is fair or accurate or not, the reality is that it violates basic contract law. It violates due process and imposes arbitrary limits without economic justification for market variance. I mean, it also risks antitrust scrutiny. I mean, there's a lot of legal loopholes before we even talk about the number that literally doesn't even make it valid.
And then it's also against like capitalism, right, and free market, in my understanding, no?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. On the most basic levels, yeah, it's against a free market.
I sure can't talk as smart as you are, but I definitely like, kind of understand a little bit about like, capitalism's economy, supply and demand. And you can't afford like markets, like every market in trucking, different city, different state, different area is going to have like a different market, different prices for rates. So if you have, say, a little grandma knitting sweaters and she knits the shit out of a bunch of them, and she's in an area where there's no trucks, for her to pay like $5 per mile to ship her sweater somewhere, like she's not going to stay in business. This is absolutely crazy.
No, and that's right. And I think I put in the comments that, I've had several different economic analysts look at this that are non-trucking people who are, deal with transportation directly. And we've sent him multiple charts and citations and all that kind of stuff. And it just falls on deaf ears. I mean, even I know you guys were talking about the $5 a mile and what that would do to the economy. I mean, yeah, that's terrifying what it would do to the American economy, depending on the sector of what it is. I mean, it's going to push a lot of people to rail or air or other things because it would almost make it cheaper. I know that seems absolutely insane, but it would. It
already is cheaper. That's the problem, and a lot of stuff's already getting pushed towards the rail. So if you got a lot of stuff going towards the rail already, taken away from truck drivers, like you said, imagine what that $5 per mile minimum is going to do. It would absolutely shut down trucking.
Right, and I think too the fundamental thing is, and I've heard your listeners talk about this tonight, is that the $5 a mile violates the Interstate Commerce Clause. It interferes with interstate rate negotiations and imposes these undue burdens on carriers operating across state lines. It conflicts with the federal presumption under the FAA, which talks about regulating motor carrier prices and routes and all that. It's kind of part of the reason why deregulation happened in the 80s with the ICC and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of what led to that. So there's no way they're going to go back that way. I mean, the American capitalism and the American markets couldn't sustain that.
So two things. Basically, you're saying I'm never going to get that tattoo on my ass that we and him agreed upon. And the second thing you're saying, so the deregulation was actually a good thing for trucking, not like what they're saying it was a bad thing, right? Because it gave more people like ways to get in and also work and make money in trucking?
So my opinion on that is, and I mean, obviously that's probably something you guys could agree or more. And I'm a firm believer that I grew up in a blue collar family, and I think that everybody has the opportunity to go out in this country and do what you want to do. Deregulation allowed people like owner operators to come into business. It wasn't controlled by mega carriers or union carriers. So in my opinion, yes, deregulation was a good thing because it opened the market to owner operators or small fleet operators or niche market operators where, yeah, I mean, without that, you would really have mega corporations, because if you don't, buy into what the ICC was doing, you weren't allowed to do it. The ICC authority, so at that point in time, just as a little quick history and to kind of explain that, is the ICC authority was so expensive that people couldn't afford to do it. It was only the mega carriers who could afford to pay that ICC authority or kind of the pay to play thing. So in my opinion, yes, deregulation was good because it gave people the ability to go out and start their own mom and pop businesses and small fleets and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, that's obviously an industry question.
So Audrey, it's Armstrong down here. You are 100% correct, and I hope I didn't besmirch you by asking you to come up or embarrass you. I've just heard you in one of their lives, and you were, quote, the voice of reason. They wouldn't have let me up because I was going to articulate it in a way that they would understand, but you've articulated much better than what I would have, and I 1000% agree with everything you've said. Especially, I thought it would violate antitrust laws. I wasn't sure. Again, I'm a Canadian, but what you say makes 100% sense.
I agree with what she said too, but I only want the $5 smile for myself.
So I didn't study the pre-regulation stuff, but that was from the little stuff that I do know, it was only bigger companies, right? They were allowed to have like trucking companies, and that's why you're able to like drive from like Chicago to California and go back empty, and you still made a bunch of money. And the smaller people and smaller companies were not able to get into the industry, right? Am I getting the gist of it?
Absolutely, yeah, you are. And Armstrong, you are correct. It does violate some antitrust things. It's just unfortunately antitrust is lower on that list of things that it violates versus some of those big constitutional issues, but you are correct. And you're both correct.
Okay, so what the regulation did in essence, it allowed Ma and Pa to venture into the marketplace and to do on-demand, just-in-time deliveries of FAK, freight of all kinds, ex-Detroit, put 2 drivers in the truck, and deliver in San Diego within 72 hours. And there was no way these regulated carriers like Mushroom, Maisland, Pacific Intermountain Express, they would be 2 weeks and charge you $30,000. And these people came in below fair market threshold at that time, let's say $17,000, were able to get it there. They had the proper insurances, which is huge, okay, and they had professional drivers, which is even more bigger at that point in time, correct?
Were you in a bathtub now, Roger, dude? What the fuck is going on?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, yes, you are correct. Yeah, no, and to kind of a little bit, I just wanted to redirect just a little bit. Basically, what it did fundamentally is it allowed mom and pop carriers to even be involved in the industry in any capacity, whether that was a broker or a dispatcher or a shipper or anything like that. Prior to that, those restrictions were held very tightly by the ICC, and you had to kind of pay the tithing, as the old adage goes, to be involved at all. It wasn't just the actual transportation; it was all of the industry. They had the industry locked down.
Wait, so
That's right. And they had a lawyer called Hank Seaton who made a phenomenal amount of money defending these regulated carriers so people would not get license and reciprocity through a given area.
Wait, so were you the one that was in that little, like, didn't you guys do like a little podcast together or like an interview or something? Was that you or no? Or am I thinking of something else, somebody else?
Me? I've been on some of their lives, and like I said, I kind of tend to be the antichrist on it because I talk about the policy side of it, and I'm just like, you can't do this because of that, and so I get shut down pretty quick. And again, do I think there are ways to improve your industry through policy? Absolutely, but it's not through that.
Okay, so there's another lady that's a lawyer, right? Or was that you working with them and they said you're a lawyer? They didn't even know what you were doing because they said they were working.
Yeah, there's a lady who's a creator. She's a lawyer, and I believe she's a broker. Maybe
Is
she's a
that
driver too.
Cassandra Gaines by any chance, ma'am?
I don't know. You know, I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of in that. I try to avoid a lot of that stuff, and that's why I kind of lurk in the questions and the comments because I don't know who all they're working with. The only reason why I said anything is like I said when you're like, well, you're the brains, and I'm like, ooh, not on that side. I just want to clarify that I'm kind of the.
Hey, these guys are not the brightest, but do they think you're the brains?
She's wonderful, Bobby, and Bobby. I could not believe she was in the in the chat. And again, I hope I didn't besmirch you by bringing you up. It's just I know you can add value. I'm going mute again.
No, and I don't know if I'll tell you this. If I was the brains of the operation, we would stop doing all of the TikToking we're doing with all of that kind of stuff, and I would kind of rein that in because I work with other industries that are doing similar things with not necessarily rates, but their own agendas, and we try to stay off of social media unless it's a uniformed message or something like that. But so I don't know, maybe they think I'm the brains, but it's interesting because when you say, it's kind of like being a mom when you say, no, you can't go out and take the car out for a ride, then you're the bad guy, right? And so all I'm trying to do is, as somebody I've worked in Washington, D.C., I've worked in several states, I've worked in local government. I just know that if you came to the government, if you came to the federal government with that, whatever, petition, I call it a document. I don't even call it a petition. They would not even give you the opportunity to speak. They wouldn't even pay any attention to you. They're not going to give it any credibility. It hasn't been vetted. There's no citations. It hasn't been reviewed by a legal team. It hasn't, all of those things. Is my side of it is that what I do is I draft legislation, I cite it, I put all the legalities in it, I ship it off to economists, I ship it off to lawyers, they review it, they kick it back to me, and they're like, yeah, this is bad, big X's, or yeah, this is good, but it's going to have a huge economic impact. And then we rework the legislation for whether my client is a senator or a congressman or a state legislator or townsman or whatever, and we rework it. It takes months to years to do that. I'll be honest with you. It takes a long time. It's not something that you just slap into Chat GPT and you do that. It doesn't work like that. And so what I was telling them is that if this is actually something they want to do, you have to dial it back and you have to make sure that your idea is in compliance with just basic law. You can question FMCSA's rules and policy and all that. That's fine. But there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And this AFFTRA is the wrong way to do it.
Okay. So basically, if you at just listening to the way you talk and like you know how you say stuff. Okay, you definitely don't have nothing to do with this because they have a Google document, like, you know what I mean, as their website, which is just absolutely, you know, unprofessional and pathetic, in my opinion. And then second question, well, not the first statement, second question is I have, like, just based on everything you're looking at, like, on a 0 to 100% chance of any of this going through, what do you give it?
-3.
Okay, that's what I figured. All right, Ms. Audrey, any other things you want to add? Thank you for joining us. And is there anything else you want to finish with or let us know?
No, I'll just briefly touch on the idea about the market thing. I think actually, I kind of actually tend to agree with you to a point, but here's the wild card in that. When we are taking money from other countries and we're doing this kind of globalization thing, part of that trade-off is labor dumping. So if we, like today, where we took $1 trillion from Saudi Arabia, the trade-off to that is we're going to be dealing with Saudi businesses in our country. And one of the unfortunate easiest industries for international people to get involved in is going to be trucking. And so that's kind of the trade-off there when it comes to crashing markets and all that. So
how's that going to work though? Because I heard that they don't even have that much money to give us. So like that's, you know, according to what I was listening to, they're saying that they're kind of like down right now. You know, oil prices are not high enough for them to make that kind of money in Saudi Arabia. Literally right now, they kind of like overpromise for something they don't even really have right now.
Absolutely, they did. And that's a whole international trade issue that's going to kind of come back and bite us. But it makes good PR, right? Like it's a good American talking point.